Hi there, winners. Now, believe it or not, bookmakers don't just sit around boardroom tables debating outcomes of sports games. They use a huge range of tools to set their lines. One of those tools allows them to simulate outcomes tens of thousands of times. They model every possible outcome, calculate the probability of each one, and they set their odds or take a lean based on that. One of these simulations is called the Monte Carlo Simulation, and along with a bunch of other tools, pros use this one all the time, and so can you. Now, I built a free Monte Carlo simulator that does exactly this for NBA games, and I'm going to show you how it works. But first of all, what is Monte Carlo? What's this simulator, and how does it work? Let me tell you, once I explain this to you and how you can use it yourself, this will change how you think about betting completely. Well, first of all, who am I? My name is Scott, and I've been working in the industry for bookmakers, against bookmakers, and now I build automations for pro bettors and for punters just like you. And if you get anything at all out of this video today, click a like below, click subscribe. It's free to do, and I'd really appreciate it. So now, Monte Carlo. What is the Monte Carlo simulation? Now, it sounds fancy, sounds a bit complicated. It's not. Let me break it down properly for you. First of all, some history. Now, the idea actually comes from a guy called Stanislav Ulam. He was a mathematician working on nuclear weapons in the 1940s, proper heavy stuff. And he got a pretty bad case of encephalitis. Now, that wasn't uncommon back then, and he actually recovered. And during his recovery, he started playing hundreds and hundreds of games of solitaire. Now, he's a smart guy, and he was thinking about probability and maths all the way through this. So he wanted to understand the probability of winning a hand and realize that the problem was too complex for just a neat formula. So instead of trying to calculate the exact answer, he just played thousands more times with random shuffles and looked at what would happen the most. Then, when he got better, he went to a colleague of his, John von Neumann, and they applied the same idea to simulate nuclear reactions. And that's it. That's how the Monte Carlo system was born. You can actually simulate something thousands and thousands of times using randomness, and you let the results tell you the probabilities. And an interesting sidebar on this, when Ulam was modeling these nuclear reactions, he actually realized each step depended on the step before it. Neutron hits an atom, and what happens next depends on that collision, not what happened 5 steps ago. Now, to handle that, he actually used something called Markov chains. Now, that's named after a Russian mathematician called Andrei Markov, who developed the idea back in 1906, so about 40 years earlier. Now, Markov chain is basically a system where the next thing that happens only depends on the current state, not the full history of the event. And that's actually really useful in sports, right? So you can model, say, a basketball game as a series of states: possessions, shot attempts, rebounds, turnovers. Each state flows into the next based on probabilities. So Markov chains are especially powerful for in-play betting and great for sports like tennis. You can model what's likely to happen next based on what's happening right now. For example, in tennis, it's very easy on a service game. I'll do a whole separate video on Markov chains for sports betting because it deserves its own deep dive. But I wanted to mention it here because Monte Carlo and Markov chains are cousins, and they're often used together. And there's a modern technique that's actually literally called the Markov chain Monte Carlo. But for today, though, we're just going to focus on the Monte Carlo method, simulating full game outcomes thousands of times to find value. So here's the simplest example, a coin flip. Now, I've obviously used this example before. Say I flip a coin, and you know the probability is going to be 50-50, 50% heads, 50% tails. But what if you didn't know that? What if nobody had ever told you, you'd never thought about probability, you've never thought about anything like this before? Well, you could flip it 10,000 times, count the number of heads, and you'd land somewhere very close to 50%. Now, that essentially is a Monte Carlo simulation. You didn't calculate the answer using math, you just did the simulation yourself 10,000 times, and you discovered it through repetition. Let's say we expand this to something with more than 2 outcomes. Let's say we're rolling a dice, and we want to roll the number 2. What are the odds of rolling a number 2, right? If you didn't know the odds or didn't understand probability, you could roll a dice 10,000 times and work out how many times a number 2 comes up. So you could roll the dice 10,000 times, count how many times the number 2 comes up, divide that by 10,000, and you get something like 0.166, which is 1 in 6. The maths eventually works itself out the more times that you do something. Now that's basically how the Monte Carlo system works. So in sports, we basically do the same thing. Instead of flipping a coin or rolling a dice, we simulate a team's score. And you start off by doing this in a very basic way. So first of all, we need two numbers. The first is the average points per game, otherwise known as the mu or the mean, right? And that just means that's the team's average scoring level. In this example, it's their average points per game, okay? And then we also need the sigma, which is the standard deviation. Now that's just a fancy way of saying how much the score tends to move around from game to game, right? So if a team is inconsistent, a sigma might be bigger. If they're steady, the sigma is going to be smaller. All right. And then we come to the formula, which is not that hard. And it's basically score equals a normal distribution with a mean and a standard deviation sigma. So basically that means the score is drawn from a normal distribution centered on the mean with sigma describing the spread. More basically, you pick a realistic score from a bell-shaped curve centered around the team's average. So for example, if the Lakers are averaging 114 points and their normal game-to-game variation is around 11 points, then one simulation might give it 121, another might give it 106, another might give it 118. Okay, so basically you're simulating the scores each time you run the simulation. Now, none of these numbers are guaranteed, obviously. They're just realistic outcomes for the same team on that same night. And also, it's not taking into account a lot of the other features that we can add into this model, which is, have they played that team before? What was the last scores? Who's playing tonight? All of those different things, right? They all come into it later down the track. But with just these basic numbers and running this 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 times, you can start to answer useful questions like how often do they score over 115? How often do they win when they score over a certain amount? And also, how often does the total go over the line? Important questions when you're coming up with your betting models, okay? So basically, Monte Carlo in sports is you take a team's average, you add its normal variability, and then you simulate the game again and again and again and again, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 times, and you come up with a range of likely outcomes. Now, obviously, you can't sit and write this down and run it. You can do it in Excel spreadsheets, but you can also do Python scripts and all sorts of things to make this a lot easier. And then we come to the big one, adding in smarter inputs, right? So if you can add in any number of statistics into your model, you can actually get better outputs and get better points per game variables. So you're not changing the maths, you're basically just changing the inputs. So you can put in things like head-to-head, where teams score differently against different opponents. You can put in recent form, the last 5 games weighted heavier than the season average. So you can put in back-to-back, so fatigue on back-to-back games. You can put in home and away splits, pace matchups, any number of inputs you can put into the model, and then you can adjust the weights of all of those different variables, okay? So to demonstrate this, I've actually created a free Monte Carlo simulation using real statistics over at bettingtools.ai. So let's go over and have a look. So once you're over here, you can actually see today's games in this drop down. And let's have a look at the Lakers-Warriors game on later today. So if you look down here, the first two statistics you've got here are the points per game and standard deviation of the two teams, okay, like we spoke about before. Now, if you just put in these two numbers for each, then you would get a result. Now, it's probably not going to be that meaningful, all right? And what we want to do is we want to add in a bunch of other statistics to come up with more meaningful results. And what this does here, it actually pulls in a bunch of other stats from all the games across the season, and then you can weight those statistics differently throughout the simulation. So we have things here like the home and away points per game split. So you can see here that the Warriors score more at home and less away. And whereas for the Lakers, they're actually quite even on their home away split. So once you put this into the model, it will actually work things out a little bit differently. And obviously with the Warriors playing at home tonight, that's going to be a big difference. So recent form is another one. Now team season average includes October games while they're still figuring out rotations. Now the Lakers have averaged 121 over the last 5 games. That might be more representative of how they're playing right now. So you're going to put more weight toward those more recent games. And that's what this model has done. Pace is an interesting one. Now, if there's two fast teams that are playing one another, there'll be more possessions, which usually means more points. If a fast team plays a slow, grinding team, the total gets dragged down. You can adjust the mean based on the expected pace of the matchup. The numbers that have come in here have come from a statistical model. So 100 for the Warriors and 99 for the Lakers. So we'll see how that plays out. So as you can see, there's a bunch of other statistics as you go down here. Now we haven't got any player-based statistics in here. So if you get really advanced into this, you can actually add players, which can make a big difference, as we know. Because one player in and out can make a huge difference to any of these statistics as we go forward. But at the moment, these are all team-based statistics. And then down the bottom here, we've got the current odds, spread, total, money line. Okay. And so when this runs, the formula is going to stay the same as what we spoke about before, where score equals the normal of the mu or mean and sigma. But the quality of the mu and sigma gets better the more context that you factor in. Now, you don't have to worry about any of this with this particular one here and how it's been done, but in the background, the actual weighting has been done with all of these different numbers. And actually, on this screen, I didn't show you, you can actually change any of these if you wanted to change them, okay? So this is how it works. You can actually change any of these numbers and play around with them. But these are actual numbers that have come in. So if you needed to adjust, you can actually do this on the fly. So if we refresh that and come back and we've got the clean numbers again. But ultimately, the idea is better inputs mean the better simulations and better outputs. All right. And some of these models can actually get up to a huge number of inputs. And it's a real way that you can actually model the way that these games will play out. Ultimately, it's the same as any betting model that anyone does. Garbage in, garbage out. All right. So the better data that you have going into your model, the better data you're going to get coming out and the better numbers that you're going to get and the better models you're going to be able to build out of this. Now, this is just one way to build this Monte Carlo model. And there's a million ways to do it and a million ways to add data into it. This is one way that we've done it here. And you can jump in and play around with it for free over here at bettingtools.ai. So let's have a look at how this runs when we click run the simulation. And let's dump it up to 50,000 simulations and we'll see how it plays out. So we press go, it's calculating, and here we go. All right. Okay, so here's the output, and let's have a look at what this tells us. All right. Now the simulation has projected the Warriors to actually score around 123 points and the Lakers 119 for a total of around 242 and a margin of plus 4 points. Okay, so that's the Warriors winning by around 4 points. But the averages aren't where the value is. Let's dig into the markets and have a quick look. So let's look at the distribution on the bell curve. Now the green bars are where the Warriors win and the red bars are when the Lakers win. Now you can see the bulk of the outcomes sit between the Warriors winning by 1 and the Warriors winning by 10. Okay? So it's through this region just here. And in fact, the peak is around the 3 to 5 point range. But if you look on the left, there's still a solid chunk of red, maybe around 40 to 45%. And they're the simulations where the Lakers win or it's quite close. Now, obviously, it can definitely happen, all right? And that's the variance. And that's why you don't bet your house on a single game ever, even with a small edge, okay? Now, this histogram, it actually shows you the full picture. But it's not just Warriors will win, but it's how they win and by how much, and how often things can go the other way. And so this is basically what the bookmaker sees when they set their lines, right? Except they're factoring in money coming in from the public. So they've got another factor to add into the way that they do their simulations. And all we're looking at is performance data and the current odds. Well, let's just have a look down here at the edge detection and the way that this actually plays out from the statistical standpoint, right? So you've got your Warriors money line first. And the simulation is saying that they'll hit 58.9% of the time. Now the probability at the books is 53.7. So basically that's going to give you a 5.2% edge, right? So a small edge on that based on what this has worked out. On the Lakers money line, well, obviously it goes the other way. So there's a negative edge on that because our simulation is saying 41.1% of the time the Lakers are going to win, all right? The Warriors spread, and you've got here 56% simulation probability. The book probability is 51.5%. Fair odds minus 129. So you basically got a 4.9% edge with that one. So your big one here is the over under, and the model is saying it's going to go over the total of 221 and a half, 89% of the time. The books are saying 52% of the time. So obviously that's a huge edge right there. And yeah, clearly This model might need some more data. It may not be 100% accurate, but that's quite a large edge. That's a huge edge, and it's probably not 100% real. There's probably a lot of noise around this particular one. So what I would say is if you have a look at the players ins and outs, there could be something affecting this total in terms of pace, players ins and outs. I haven't had a good look at this particular game, so I'm just using it as the example. But if you play around with the numbers and start working this out and putting actual player data into it, there could actually be some changes to these numbers. As I said, this over is quite large, so take it with a grain of salt. So basically that's how it works. And apologies, I've just noticed the odds format here, and what I will do is I'll make sure that that can be put into decimal odds as well, in case you're into decimal odds, or these are currently set at American odds, which is what we have here. And so that's essentially how the Monte Carlo system works. What we've done is we've used a computer to simulate 50,000 times of this game being played using the statistics that have been entered into the system to make this work. Okay? And let's face it, everybody's got a model nowadays, and 100% encourage everyone to try making models because you learn a lot and you can actually add a lot of value to your betting by actually coming up with your own numbers. And that's essentially what this does. It means that you can come up with your own numbers and then you can adjust them as time goes on, learn from it, and come back and go over and over again. And so this is one tool I would suggest just getting familiar with and understanding more about. So ultimately what Monte Carlo can do, particularly when you have the histogram, is that it shows you the full probability distribution. Okay, you can see that, okay, yeah, most likely the Warriors are going to win by 3 to 5 points, okay? But there's a 46% chance that the Lakers will actually win or cover the line tonight, right? And that changes your bet sizing. It changes whether or not you even bet at all. It may not be the edge that you're looking for. Hey there, just jumping in right at the end here, just to give you a quick rundown of how this actually performed, this game that we were just talking about. Obviously the game has been played now, and I just wanted to bring you a quick update. It didn't turn out the way exactly that we would have expected. To be honest, it looks like the Warriors had a bit of a shocker. As you can see here, final score 119 to the Lakers, 103 to the Warriors. Obviously the Warriors were fancied in this and the Lakers smacked them. But interestingly, the model here actually got the Lakers score dead on, so 119, which was interesting. And then the over, even though the game was quite low scoring through parts of it, the over actually hit on this one. There's a lot of factors at play, but the over did hit. And this is the one we were saying to take with a grain of salt. But ultimately, as you can see, it got the Lakers score correct. The Warriors, not so good, but that's NBA and that's sport and that's what happens. But the over did hit in this case. Again, as I said, you take this with a grain of salt. It is just one model, but it's interesting to see that it actually got the Lakers score correct. So let's hang our hats on that one for this particular game and move on and see where we go from here. Anyway, just wanted to bring you that quick update. Now, back to the end of the video. And so what I recommend is coming into bettingtools.ai, take a look at the different probabilities that are coming in for the different games, and just play around with the numbers and get a feel for how it all works, okay? And what I can do in the future, if you have interest, is I can actually make an actual spreadsheet that you can plug numbers into. So just drop me a comment below if you want me to do that, and I'll actually make it available in this members section for you as well. And the most important thing really with any model is that a lot of nights or a lot of games, there's going to be no edge, right? The markets are so efficient nowadays that it's very hard to find edge. Everyone's looking at the same numbers. People are finding new numbers always. People are finding new edges, right? Things are always moving. So sometimes there's just nothing there. But if you want to do this seriously, this is a very important concept to get your head around and to understand how it's more about the numbers than the actual game that's being played in itself. And ultimately, as I've got down here, the bettors who make money long term, they're not betting every game. They're finding edges in particular circumstances, in props, in all sorts of things, and they're actually finding one or two spots where they can pick off the value. And the rest of the time, they're just learning. So what's the next step? Head on over to bettingtools.ai, take a look at the free Monte Carlo simulator and all of the other tools that are available there. And all I'll ask is that you drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. You'll get a lot of value out of all of my future videos, and I appreciate having you here. Next step for me, I'll look at adding more sports into this if there's enough interest, and we'll see how we go from there. But for now, thanks for watching, keep winning, and I'll see you in the next one.